What's up, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of pldViews. It is Thursday morning. It's a day late, day later than I usually do, but sometimes happen. We are here to discuss now the fourth episode in the weekly series, as well as going to clean up some of the Resistance database, so to speak, that some of the Resistance members who were left over from the mini series. Before we do that, I hope everybody's having a good day, good morning so far. I just got home from work, sit down, do this before I go to bed for tonight. Tonight should be a good night for me. I'm getting to host the first episode of the general debate on the Action Industries YouTube channel. If you don't know what that is, go to Action Industries on YouTube or the patreon.com/Team Action. I'll tell you a little bit about that. That's what we're doing today. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about my favorite show of the 1980s, and an episode that I actually really, really enjoyed. It's the fourth episode that was shot. Although I will say it's interesting. Interestingly enough, I believe I mentioned this last time with the third episode. It was the third episode shown because episode 3 was deemed to be too violent for NBC to showcase at that time. Um, if you have any questions, you can put them on the screen. I do have a Streamlabs at streamlabs.com/PLD projects. I'll try to keep that in mind. I'm not used to it yet, but we'll see what happens. Um, but this episode started off, it says, first of all, it's called The Deception. It was an episode that had to serve as a twofold because like I said, when episode 3 was deemed too violent, they had to do some backtracking and they had to introduce some characters because people like Kyle Bates was introduced last episode. And now he had to be reintroduced to the Resistance before he could move on. And kind of awkward if all of a sudden he just showed up and no one knew who he was, huh? But the third episode, hi Danny. Danny's in the chat. Good to see you, Danny. Love to see you. Yes, the Yoda to my Ahsoka. So it's interesting. Actually, another note I would want to say that episode 3, which was deemed too violent for NBC, was replayed when they did the reruns later on in the season. So I don't know what happened, what changed. My gut instinct tells me that it moved a time slot from like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock to an hour later, where they determined that it was okay to show a little bit of more violent scenes later on. Hi, Garth. What's going on? 7 a.m. This is when I get home from work. This is my late night, so I could have. I started just doing this live for the hell of it. I didn't actually think anybody would show up, but hey, I'm glad to have you guys here. So let's talk about this episode. The fourth episode, again, written by Garner Simmons. It was an episode that had to do with Elizabeth, but amazingly enough, despite everything I've been saying so far, Elizabeth really didn't use any of her Jedi powers this time, so it actually seemed more realistic. This is one of my favorite episodes of the early part of the season, well before the the series started taking a big downturn towards about episode 12, where it kind of tanked towards the end. But we open up with Robin, again, because of skipping of episode 3. Now they had to open up that she had run away from her car at the end of episode 2, and she was left in the wilderness. She comes across Kyle Bates, who is riding motorcycles in the desert, not the desert, the plateaus and the upper valleys of Los Angeles. Now, Kyle Bates, as we noticed, is the son of Nathan Bates, the person who has become the de facto leader of Los Angeles, having a free, open city, which, again, I said it before, I'll say it again, was a great concept on paper, but in execution ends up taking away some of the fear of the visitors. And you find that later on. This is where I start seeing that the visitors become less intimidating than they had been. The whole great part about the miniseries, it almost had a horror tinge to it. You were very scared about when you're going to come across these alien visitor shock troopers. Now the shock troopers become more like stormtroopers, less scary. They're going to miss their shot. They're going to get beat up by the resistance fighters, and they're going to get away. So it becomes a little less intimidating as it goes on. And the open city certainly doesn't help that because there's no fighting involved, supposedly. Nobody's supposed to be carrying weapons. Of course, they do a little bit, but it's still not an easy sell when you're trying to make it such a scary incident when they're talking to the visitors left and right. The visitors are eating with them. So I didn't like that aspect of it. I found out. I like the concept. It was a very World War II allegory concept, but it just didn't work out as far as that goes. But back to where Robin was. Robin meets Kyle Bates in the desert, and Kyle had said to help her out, take her on his bike when they come across a someone who dives out of a plane. So Kyle goes, checks it out. We find out it's someone trying to get a message from New York, the New York-based resistance, entitled first off, the World Liberation Front, which we got to learn that title. I believe this episode we got that. Basically, I believe it's the resistance that Ham Tyler had mentioned during View the Final Battle when he had first shown up on the scene. They're trying to get a message to the resistance, and basically you find out later it's about getting Elizabeth to New York. That's the plan. They want to move Elizabeth from Los Angeles to New York, where the Red Dust is still active. They can keep her away from Diana, who is obviously hell-bent on getting her back for various reasons, one of which you assume it's because Diana realizes that Elizabeth is the person whose body, if she studies her genetics, might be able to determine a way to get an antidote for the toxin, the red dust that has covered the Earth and kept the visitors away from most of the planet. But of course, I think it's a little bit silly considering that Robin is still missing. They're going to move Elizabeth, who is technically 2 years old, really, not even 2 years old yet, even though she has the physicality of a 17-year-old. But I guess it makes sense to a degree, at least get her out of the way and get her safe. But anyway, Kyle grabs his message, this satchel he's going to bring to the resistance base. The guy gives him the address. And this is where the first funny part comes in to me. Visitors come and they start chasing them, and they have motorcycles. This is where the start of the downfall starts happening slowly but surely. Visitors start taking on Earth vehicles, Earth weapons, things like that. It's like they don't have anything better than I don't have to seek a sky cycle or anything too futuristic, but they just basically take human tech and throw the V swastika up on the side, and that's it. You get vans, you get cars, you get, like I said, motorbikes, everything like that. I kind of was hoping for a little more technology, but that's the cost cutting has already begun. And you see it just gets worse and worse as it goes on. Although, to be fair, it was still the highest, most expensive show on TV at the time, so they had to cut costs somewhere. They already had lost their special voices. They were no longer echoing or reverberating. Either way, Kyle gets to the resistance base. And frustrating, this is a little bit frustrating for a bit. He has Robin go to his house, even though Robin should be meeting up with the resistance. It's one of those kind of things where it's like that cat and mouse where nobody knows what's going on. It's the miss cycles of opportunity. Robin stays there while Kyle goes to deliver the message. Gets some of the same dialogue between Kyle and Ham that we got from the third episode, again, making it a little bit strange when you watch it back now. But either way, Kyle ends up meeting Elizabeth while they're there, because that becomes the introduction of the most awkward love triangle in the history of TV, as far as I'm concerned. You have Kyle Bates had just met Robin, and Robin already obviously has a crush on him immediately. It's pretty obvious. And then Kyle meets Elizabeth, who is Robin's daughter. Again, Robin's 2-year-old daughter or so, who has the physicality now after she went to the cocoon twice now. She has the physicality of a 17-year-old. So, yeah, kind of a weird thing. Kyle is interested in a 2-year-old. Sci-fi, baby. Sci-fi. So the mother, who is not much older than that, likes him. He likes the daughter. Sounds almost like an adult film, right? But this is 85 sci-fi. What do you want to do? During this time, the other time, is Donovan gets the message decoded by going to Julie at the Science Frontiers where she works. Julie, again, is working with Nathan Bates as kind of a mole. She wants to keep apprised of the situation, even though she's definitely a former resistance leader. Donovan gets captured, and for the first time, we get to see Sean Donovan, his son, since the final battle. It's played by a different actor this time, played by Nicky Katt, who you might know from Dazed and Confused, you might know from Boston Public TV show that was on for a little while. He plays the little bit older kid of Donovan, and Diana's using him as because he was converted. His mind was brainwashed, basically. They use him to lure Donovan in to try to capture him. Although it's kind of strange. The conversion process is somehow wearing off or something to that effect, because Sean's showing that he wants to be with his father again, which is something that you could never really see early on. Once the conversion process happened in the miniseries, it was either done. Julie was the lone exception because her conversion was not really finished before the resistance were able to break her out. They introduced this drug called Procol, Diana says, to give Sean a shot of Procol. So we're introducing some kind of weird thing. I don't really like that angle. The drug can make the conversion process any better. But either way, Donovan gets captured. And an interesting kind of cool idea, they put him in this holographic room, so it looks like he's at his house. And they play it off like that he's been he's been out for a little bit, but the war has already been won. The war has been over. Diana uses this holographic room to holographic necklaces as well. They put them on her, and Diana looks like Julie, or Lydia will look like Julie. And they interrogate them in a way that, like, Donovan will give up information because he thinks the war is over, but he's had amnesia. It's humorous aspects. They have that. It said Ham Tyler's getting married the next day, and Donovan's his best man, and Donovan's like, what the fuck is going on? But he does kind of slip up and reveal the contents of the message, which is what Diana wanted in the first place. Diana wants to know when Elizabeth is going to be taken to New York. This is okay. I like a little bit of it, but later on, Donovan figures it out. He breaks the wall. You see the holograph go off, and also just a room, but it seems kind of chintzy. Again, it seems kind of chintzy technology. And if they're going to do what they're going to do with the video, they should kind of either have the technology. If they're not going to have the technology, make it subtle, make it so it's easier to just kind of like not see that, like, okay, it's starting to be chintzy sci-fi TV. Again, it's the 80s, I get it. But it takes away a little bit. Of course, Donovan then escapes. All said and done, they get Julie to the chopper that's going to take her, but Diana's there. Diana's beating them too with a punch. Kyle comes in, helps them out on the resistance. Basically gets away at that point. At the end, Elizabeth decides that she doesn't want to go to New York. She wants to stay with Resistance. That's her family, and Resistance say okay, pretty much. So it's all for nothing, pretty much. But there's a couple of good moments in there. Elizabeth and Willie, of course, they're really the alien who returned and become a Resistance fighter, so to speak, or at least live with Resistance because he didn't like what the aliens were doing. They shares a moment regarding his past love from the miniseries, Harmony, who was killed in the final battle. It's a nice little touching moment there. I did like that. But again, things are starting to get a little dated looking, but and the visitors start to be more bumbling than scary. I mean, there's a couple times when Donovan escapes, he escapes pretty easily. But there's a lot of fun still. There's a lot of fun. And what's actually good to note is my little fun games I play. There actually wasn't much to do this week. I had usually have the stock footage count. There wasn't much stock footage used in this. I didn't see anything that was really egregious. Maybe there's a Skyfighter scene that I might have seen before. I didn't recognize it completely. But other than that, usually it's pretty obviously used and badly used. Also, again, Elizabeth Power, nothing Elizabeth Power-wise this time, so nothing to report about on that. There's no Howard K. Smith, which is an interesting thing to me. I noticed last time during the episode 3 and a lot of the episodes after this, I think it starts again next episode. I'm not sure that we'll get to it, I guess, when I watch it again. They open up the series with Howard K. Smith, who was a newscaster, an actual honest-to-God newsman of the time, and he would give a little update on the war that's going around across the country. I always thought that was a nice little anthology statement. We just learn about something happening in a different area of the country and of the world. They give like the Freedom Network Medal of Valor to Resistance fighters. Didn't really have anything to do with the series itself, but actually I thought it was a nice little touch to kind of showcase that the war is still going on all over the world. But there's no episode here, but why was it in episode 3? Considering that episode 3 was supposed to be shot already, did they add that in afterwards when they re-aired it? I don't know. But still, either way, it was a good episode. I give it like a solid B-. Again, the beginning part of the series, like the first 10 episodes, 11 episodes, so there are some good things in there. It's enough to keep the series going. And it's obviously a step down from the miniseries and the final battle still. Like I said, mostly it's about the fear aspect. I don't fear the visitors as much. You get Diana and Lydia have their cat fighting up on the mothership. Donovan and Ham, they always tend to get away, so kind of get a little old, but it's a lot of fun. Donovan and Ham are always great together. I still love their chemistry. Kyle is introduced, and he's a good character. He's a nice character, a little rebellious young kid, good-looking kid. But I like the episode overall. So that's where we'll end up on this particular episode. So now I'll go into the you know what I didn't do. I'll let you see some pictures that I got from the series there. Let's see what we got there. Let's see. Something is. There it is, Donovan, Kyle, and Ham meeting again for the very first time, the second time, really. There's really, in that moment I was talking to Elizabeth about love and human love and how it's really nice. It's like powerful. There's the hologram that Donovan thinks he's kissing Julie, who Diana told Donovan that they've been married for a year. Interesting that Diana, it's kind of a weird soap opera thing, and that's the thing. It does another thing about the weekly series. It does get a little more soap opera-y. And Donovan figured out what's going on. He busts free, and that's Ham getting Elizabeth back from Diana. And there's Julie, who keeps her hidden agenda away from Nathan Bates, away from Diana. Diana doesn't know it's Julie. She kept her helmet on, the motorcycle helmet on the whole time. But there we go. Now let's get into the character development, the character broadcast, or the character database that I do. I'm going to spend this episode to clean up some of the resistance that I hadn't mentioned from the miniseries. A couple of smaller characters, not all of them. There's a couple that I want to save. I'm looking at saving the Taylor brothers for when I do Elias. I'm sorry, Ben Taylor and Caleb Taylor when I do Elias Taylor. I'm going to save Harmony for when I do Willie. These are the people from the final battle that were significant characters, the miniseries resistance characters that didn't make it to the weekly series for whatever reason. First one here is Father Andrew, who's in the final battle. Originally written by Kenneth Johnson to be a young hip priest. When Kenneth Johnson left the final battle, they turned this character into a very old archetypal Irish Catholic priest. He served as a moral compass. They had a nice little for the 80s debate on abortion after Robin was impregnated by the alien. It had a nice little to there. It was actually more interesting. It was much more an allegory, obviously, for women's rights, or for the for pro-choice rather, with the added caveat that it's an alien child in there. But he ends up doing very good as a guerrilla. He worked at guerrilla warfare in Africa. I believe it was Africa. I can't remember exactly. So, I'm sorry. Yeah, South Africa. And so he helped teach resistance some guerrilla warfare there as well. He ended up getting killed in the final battle when, after being scared that Elizabeth was going to get killed by Robin for being an alien child, he brought Elizabeth to Diana, and Diana ended up shooting him dead. So it's the next character we got there was Ruby, one of my favorite characters from the original miniseries and the final battle. She was, if you remember, the Bernstein family, the Jewish family who helped take in the Maxwells, even though their son Daniel was a member of the Visitors' Friend, or basically the Hitler Youth of the Visitors. Ruby was the best friend of the senior patriarch, Daniel's grandfather. And when he was killed and he was taken, Ruby joined up with the Resistance headstrong, and he was a very big mentor to Julie, who was a very strong female character. The Resistance was great, but she ended up being killed by Daniel Bernstein during a mission to get Julie back. I kind of missed her. I thought she was a nice character. Of course, that's because of Kenneth Johnson's little timeline thing. We don't really know what happened to her in Timeline 2, because after she was never really heard from again during the second generation. She made it through the original miniseries, but never made it to the second generation. Next up, Sancho Gomez. He was in the original miniseries and the final battle, and actually he made it to one of the books. He was one of the Resistance fighters who had lived to the final battle, and we weren't sure if he was going to make it to the weekly series or not. So the people who wrote the books, they put him in one of the first books, The Pursuit of Diana. His heyday though was the original miniseries. The final battle, he was his role was pretty reduced, just to be almost like a regular, just resistance grunt, so to speak. The first one, he was a significant piece. He helped get the Maxwells out of Los Angeles, but he gets captured later on. But Donovan then gets him back from the mothership when he's on the mothership at the same time. They fly. He shoots out some TIE fighters. It's a nice little segment. It's a nice little it was a nice little colorful addition to the cast, which was a very multiracial, especially for the 80s, it's a multiracial, multi-generational, well-sprawling cast that was resisting. I did like his character quite a bit. But let's see. Yeah, so he never made it. He actually lived. If you don't actually know what his fate was, like I said, he made it to the final battle. And he lived at the end, but he just didn't make it to the weekly series when they had to pare down. So his fate is really unknown. You got Tony, Watchung Leonetti, and Fran Leonetti. These are two. Tony was the original miniseries. He was Mike Donovan's assistant, his cameraman. Donovan's a music cameraman, journalist. He was going around trying to get all these shots. Tony was his engineer that went with him all the time. Best friend in the world. He had some great moments in the original miniseries. He was the one who discovered the visitors were converting top officials by discovering that the converted people were using left hand instead of the right hand. It was a nice, interesting. He was a very smart guy, helped Donovan out as best he could. Fran was his wife. She made less of an appearance. She only made a really quick appearance a couple times when meeting Tony. Donovan get his son's friend to her to help kind of take care of him while his son's friends were missing. Tony was ended up being killed in the original miniseries when Donovan and him are captured trying to sneak up to the mothership. I had a horrifying moment, which is only talked about, not seen, which is one of those things that sometimes it's great to just tell somebody about something, let their imagination run wild. Donovan just takes the covering off, and you just see him get horrified. And Martin tells Donovan that Diana had ordered some medical experiments on him. This was kind of a horrifying thing. You don't know what happened to him, but he's no longer in our world. And Fran again is in the original miniseries, and that's it. You don't really hear from her. Next up, last two actually, we got Brad and Mark. Look kind of similar, don't they? That's because I think they were kind of sort of trying to pull a fast one without pulling a fast one. Brad was in the original miniseries. He played a cop, ex-cop who turned into a resistance fighter. Mark played, he's in the final battle, not in the original miniseries. He was a cop that turned into a resistance fighter. Brad was not seen in the final battle, and Mark was not seen in the original. I gotta feel like Brad didn't want to come back for whatever reason, so they basically said, we like this archetype those things. Got this guy to play Mark, Sandy Simpson to play Mark, and basically it's the same character, but it's just a different name. But it ends up being Brad. So Brad technically though lives though, because his fate was never decided, whereas Mark does get killed in the final battle and the attack on the water processing plant. He and Ham Tyler kind of verbally spar quite a bit, but then he sacrifices himself to let the resistance get away, despite just getting engaged right before the mission. But that's where we're going to end up on the database today. We'll do some more next time. This time we're going to get into the 5th episode. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. Thank you, my viewers like Danny and Garth for popping in. And I hope you guys will pop in next time. I've got some more stuff I'm going to do today. Well, not today, but maybe later on. I'm going to prepare for my final Star Wars episode, PLD 1138. Final weekly. I'm still going to pop up and do it every once in a while. I'm going to finally get my views out on the Clone Wars, which is phenomenal. Some of the Star Wars news we had. Like I said before, later on tonight, you'll find me doing the general debate. You'll find me do some other stuff here and there. I got some other shows in development. One called Not That Bad, which I'm not sure, but I'm also developing possibly an interview show, which I'll talk to you more about when I get it done. But most importantly, after the Star Wars one is done, I know for sure that I'm going to get into the Harris-dance, which is going to go through Ed Harris's career from chronological order, all his feature films. And at the end of that, if I still want to keep going, I'm probably going to the TV there, because I probably want to talk about Westworld at some point, because it's one of Ed's greatest roles. But for now, at least we'll start with the filmography, get into all the different things. I'll review the film. I'll talk about Ed's role in it, talk about how it was developed and everything else, and I'll rank it. I have some other fun games I got planned for that. But that'll be replacing my weekly Star Wars episode, which we'll go into more of it to see what I want to talk about Star Wars when there's news to talk about. And back when The Mandalorian comes back, I'll go back to weekly reviews again of that. But anyway, thank you so much for popping in. Thank you for staying on. Hit that like and subscribe button. You can always send me a question. I try to look in Streamlabs in between. If you have a question, I can answer it on air next time. But I love you guys. I hope you had a good time, and I will see you next week, and if not before. Take care, guys. Have a good day. Pretanama.